Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how the situation surrounding Metroid Prime 2 and perhaps also Metroid Prime 3 has gotten a lot more interesting. So recently, just earlier this week, the Metroid Prime 1 through 3 visual retrospective artbook has come out. I have it, and there's a very interesting quote inside this artbook from the Metroid Prime series producer, Kensuke Tanabe, that is causing many fans to speculate on what may be next for Metroid Primes 2 and 3, which is a very interesting conversation to have right now, considering that Metroid Prime 4 is going to come out in a few weeks. And so the big question has been, are we going to see Metroid Prime 2 and 3 come out before Prime 4, or are they going to come out sometime later down the road? And if so, in what form may they come in? So today what we're going to be doing is breaking down this quote and trying to extrapolate what it may ultimately mean, and consider the different possibilities for what is going on with Metroid Prime 2 and 3. It's pretty interesting. So that's the plan for today. Do you find yourself feeling tired, unable to take a good nap during the day from wherever you may be? Then perhaps you are in need of a soft, comfortable sleep mask that blocks out all light. Fortunately, Manta Sleep, the sponsor for today's video, has just that. A quality sleep mask. This sleep mask has super soft, comfy cushions that cover your eyes and block out all light. It's easy to adjust to different sizes, and it feels great to wear. And it's helped me personally fit in just a bit more rest during my days. So if you're looking to improve your sleep and energy, check out the Manta Sleep mask using the link in the description below with my code SLEEPRESTART. So just a reminder for those who didn't see my prior video from yesterday, but I am in vacation mode now, so I'm recording a whole bunch of videos on the same day. The editing is going to be a bit simpler. As you may see on screen here, what I'm doing is simply flipping through the pages in the Metroid Prime 1 through 3 art book. The art is amazing, so that's just going to be kind of like the background footage as I talk about what is going on here. So on page 107, there is a big producer's note having to do with Metroid Prime 2. There are producer's notes from Kensuke Tanabe all throughout the art book, mentioning and talking about a lot of very interesting things, but this part in particular is extremely interesting considering the subject of Metroid Prime 2 and 3 coming in modern forms in the not-so-distant future, or the distant future. We're not sure. There's a debate to be had there. So let me go ahead and read you the relevant parts. The development of Metroid Prime 2 took place under circumstances where schedule extensions were not permitted. So in the final 3 to 4 months, we had to resolve undecided matters at an incredible pace and turn them into tangible progress every day. And then skipping through to the most relevant part, Retro completed the multiplayer mode without compromising on quality, even under such challenging conditions. Being of its time, it was designed for local play, so the number of players who actually experienced it might not have been very large. If it is remade, I would be delighted for more people to have the chance to experience it. And so that's the quote that is causing quite a stir. Kensuke Tanabe, the Prime producer, is talking about wanting Prime 2 to get remade. That is the word that is used, and I think that's actually a very interesting choice of word, because Metroid Prime 1 has been remastered. That's what it's called. Now, I think it's worth noting that the term remake and remaster, they have been interchangeable over the years for different developers. However, in general, when talking to developers, especially developers of Metroid Prime Remastered, they refer to it as a remaster because while from a visual perspective it's been essentially totally rebuilt, the underlying structure, the gameplay, the way the whole world works is the original code of Metroid Prime, and they simply went back to all the art, modernized it, and rebuilt the game visually to look that way. And so they consider that to be a remaster. But here Tanabe, the producer of the series, is talking about Prime 2 being remade. And so it's possible he could be getting at something perhaps even more ambitious than Metroid Prime Remastered, which I would say is maybe one of the most ambitious remasters we've ever seen from Nintendo. I would say that the original Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition was pretty ambitious as well, given that it had a new campaign and a lot of quality of life updates on top of a pretty significant visual overhaul. But Prime Remastered is definitely up there because of just how good it looks and also the nice quality of life updates. But to go back to Metroid Prime 2, they might need to do more work because it wouldn't just be about remastering in the same way they remastered Prime 1, which would be visually basically a remake for a pretty significant campaign, but they would also have to tackle the multiplayer. How would they handle that? Would they do some things to modernize it? Would it just be a 4-player local play? Considering the quote from Tanabe, how he makes mention that it was just local play considering the time, this game came out back in 2004 for the Nintendo GameCube, they didn't really have any extensive online features, or even average online features. It seems he's implying that he would like to see Metroid Prime 2 see a very significant overhaul visually, but also make the multiplayer have online play at the very least, perhaps even expanded upon. And so if that's his desire, then it has an interesting implication about what we're going to see for Metroid Prime 2 and 3 in the not-so-distant future. That being that we may not see them at all. We've been waiting for Nintendo to really dive into the massive marketing campaign for Metroid Prime 4. There are some little things that have been happening, but the big push hasn't really started yet. I assume it's going to happen really soon, but we're not quite there yet. I've considered the possibility that we get a Metroid Prime 4 Direct, and in that Direct, they announced Metroid Prime 2 and 3 to be available on the eShop, very similar to how Nintendo handled Pikmin 1 and 2 a few weeks before Pikmin 4 came out. Timing-wise, it's looking like it could match up really well. Now, if this were to happen, I don't know if I would call these games remakes. They would be subtle remasters. Pikmin 1 and 2 did look a little bit better because they were upscaled into HD, and they had a lot of quality of life updates, modernized controls, they had gyro aiming, and so they were nice improvements, but they certainly weren't anything close to the level of what we've seen with Metroid Prime Remastered, for example. I still think there's a pretty good possibility that could happen, but Tanabe's words here in the art book do lead one to think that maybe he wants them to do something more ambitious, and so if that's the case, I would think that they are not going to happen. Now, it's also possible that he's using the term remake very loosely, and perhaps you could count very subtle remasters as a remake here, and it would be an opportunity to offer the multiplayer with some online options. I mean, technically, they could just put Metroid Prime 2 on Nintendo Classics, and all multiplayer games have the option for online play there, and there wouldn't really need to be that much work done. The game would look a little bit better because it would be upscaled to a higher resolution, and then the multiplayer would have online play, which is a nice little improvement there. But I definitely don't think that's what Tanabe is alluding to here. Now, something else to point out is that it's possible, I suppose, that he doesn't even know about what they're doing with Metroid Prime 2 and 3 because he's not responsible for that. He's just responsible for producing the main Metroid Prime games. This would be a smaller side project that perhaps Nintendo would put together to help market and build up attention for Metroid Prime 4. If we take his words at face value, where he says, if it is remade, I would be delighted for more people to have the chance to experience it, that's not him necessarily teasing or suggesting he knows anything. So I'm not ruling out the possibility of us seeing Prime 2 and maybe 3 in the not-so-distant future as Pikmin 1 and 2 style remasters, which would be very basic, but I also think there is a substantial chance that perhaps Tanabe does have a say here, would know what's going on, and would only say something like this if Prime 2 and 3 are not coming out soon, and he's perhaps pulling for more ambitious projects for 2 and 3 later down the road. Prime 3 is a Wii game, so we can't really expect that to come to Nintendo Classics anytime soon until they add Nintendo Wii. But I actually really do like the idea of us just getting Metroid Prime 4 in a few weeks and Nintendo does some sort of summary so people understand what they need to know going into Prime 4, which, by the way, isn't really much of anything at all. You could go into Prime 4 as your very first Metroid game, and it'll be totally fine. And I actually find it fascinating that perhaps what Nintendo's really planning here is to save multiple Metroid Prime projects to come out later down the road. Maybe they're actually thinking about remastering Prime 2 in similar fashion to Prime 1, but also having some online multiplayer as well, and that comes out in between Metroid Prime 4 and maybe Metroid Prime 5, and then after Metroid Prime 5, they revisit Metroid Prime 3 in similar fashion, and then we're talking about Metroid Prime 6. Now, I'm obviously talking about years down the road, But I do think what Nintendo wants to do, and this has been rumored, that they want to get every Metroid Prime game onto Nintendo Switch 2 eventually, and the real big idea here is just to continually release Metroid games, not just the Prime games, but Metroid games overall, like the 2D Metroid games, perhaps even some interesting spin-offs, and just keep the brand growing, keep the brand relevant, and have regular releases from different studios, different types of games. We're not talking about rushed games here, we're talking about different Metroid projects that are all getting the attention they need so they can be high quality when they do come out, but there's just so many that we do see some consistency here, and it's just basically a good time for Metroid fans. Very similar to how we see a lot of Mario games, how we see a lot of Zelda games. We see almost a Zelda game every year, close. Perhaps Nintendo wants to get Metroid to a similar point, and really, there's a lot they can pull from, because you have Metroid Prime 2, you have Metroid Prime 3, you have Metroid Prime Federation Force, you have Metroid Prime Hunters. We also expect that the next 2D Metroid, the next new one, Metroid 6, is not that far off, not to confuse it with the Prime series. The way each of these series are numbered is separate from each other, so really there's a huge catalog of games that Nintendo can go back to, while also balancing the new projects to keep Metroid relevant for years to come. But I'll also say there's so much potential for different Metroid projects in the future that Nintendo could get away with putting out Metroid Prime 2 and 3 a few weeks before Prime 4, as we talked about, very similar to Pikmin 1 and 2, basic remasters. That way people have the option to play these games, and they can fall back to other Metroid projects to keep the Metroid momentum going for years to come. Like, imagine if they were to go back to Metroid Prime Hunters and make a new Metroid Prime Hunters. It's a side Metroid Prime project where they focus on multiplayer, and that's like one of those in-between games before the next mainline 2D Metroid and the next mainline Metroid Prime, which would likely be years away. At least the Metroid Prime 5. 2D Metroid actually might be pretty close. Given that Dread came out back in 2021, it's already been over 4 years, so Mercury Steam, who I think is likely the developer for the next 2D Metroid, might even be announcing something for next year, so there's already more reason to think that they're going to be continuing this Metroid momentum. But in terms of what I would I prefer to wait perhaps a couple years before we see Metroid Prime 2 remastered with some finely tuned online multiplayer, or we get both Prime 2 and 3 in simple fashion right before Prime 4. Honestly, what I would prefer would be to wait for a more ambitious remastering of Metroid Prime 2 a few years from now, as a nice stopgap before the next mainline Metroid Prime game. I don't think you need to play Metroid Prime 2 or 3 before you play 4. I think it's going to be totally fine. I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to stand on its own. There's a reason why the number and the logo has been made very small. They're not even really trying to emphasize the number. Just think of it as Metroid Prime Beyond. When you play a new 3D Mario or when you play a new 3D Zelda, you're not thinking, wow, I haven't played the last 5 or 6 Zelda games, so I can't get into this one. I think that's the real main point here. This is just a new Metroid Prime game. Fans can start here, and it's going to be an amazing, amazing experience. You'll fall in love with the series, and when Nintendo does get around to remastering Metroid Prime 2, it's also going to be an amazing experience that stands on its own. So I think that would probably actually be the ideal scenario, even though I recognize a lot of people just want to have access to all the games now, because it's great having access to a larger catalog of all these classic games. Like, yes, it would be nice to have all the Metroid Prime games available on Switch and Switch 2 pretty soon, but I think long-term, the best case scenario is for us to wait to get a more ambitious remastering of 2 and eventually 3. Of course, I'm not going to complain either way. I'll be satisfied either way. We're getting Metroid Prime 4. That has me over the moon by itself. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, you can use my code SLEEPRESTART when checking the link in the description below for the Manta Sleep Mask. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.